Hola, Diego Campos. I was just chatting with you and I almost said Ricardo because we met through your brother Ricardo, a phenomenal paddle player and lovely friend with me based in London. Diego, in your own words, who is Diego Campos?
Minter, thanks for having me in the podcast. Hope this is going to be a fun and entertaining conversation. Who am I? I'm first a paddle player and also a paddle investor. That's a very
That's
short summary.
that is. I would imagine there's a little bit more, like where are you based?
Yeah, I'm based out of Miami. I've been in Miami for the last 8 years. I'm originally from Mexico City. And yeah, I mean, we've been involved in the paddle ecosystem in Miami early on when we only used to have two clubs in town and we didn't need to book a court in advance and we can just show up to now where we have more than, 25 clubs in the city, which is kind of insane, the growth of the last few years. But I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Phenomenal. And so, on the Joy of Paddle, we like to talk about paddle. You are going to be another Mexican on my podcast, and with good reason, because of course, paddle was founded in Acapulco. Let's talk about your journey. Did you discover paddle in Miami, or did you discover paddle in Mexico?
No, in Mexico for sure. Growing up, we always used to have paddle courts in the tennis clubs, right? They were always right next to each other, but kind of fun enough. I grew up playing competitive tennis, so didn't have time to play paddle at that time. But what we used to do, we used to go with my brother, which with Ricardo. We used to go inside the paddle courts with our tennis rackets and the tennis balls and just hit as hard as each other, like as we could. So that was my first experience with paddle. I was like going inside and just like hitting balls at each other.
Well, the good news is the balls kept on coming back. I mean, because you
Correct.
had the glass. And I
Correct.
assume that by your age, Diego, that you're not talking about the old concrete courts that we used to have.
Correct. So yeah, no, I think I never play in a concrete court. I've seen some, but never actually played in one of them.
The mythical courts with
Uh,
only 3 meter walls. I mean, it was
right.
such a different game back when I started anyway. So uh, in terms of your paddle, you were playing tennis. You didn't really, think of paddle too much. But how did you get into paddle? What was the moment that you said, this is the gig, this is my sport? Or I mean, you may also play, of course, tennis.
Yeah. So it's just funny enough. I haven't touched a tennis racket in like 6 years
Uh-oh.
since I started getting really more into paddle. But I started like getting more serious about paddle when I moved to the US to play college tennis, like Division One, and then after playing college tennis, like my entire body was done hurting. My tennis game was just going downhill. And then I moved back to Mexico City, and I realized that a lot of my retired like tennis friends I grew up playing with, they all switched to paddle. So I started playing paddle with them just to reconnect with them, and we started just a little bit of networking and friendship, and were all still very competitive because we all came from tennis. So that's kind of like my first kind of like through more exposure into like start playing more serious paddle and more often.
It's very
So
often
this is probably like 2014, more or
oh
less.
right, so
Yeah.
reasonably recent. Of course, you're a younger man, but um it's often the case. A lot of in my life, I've met many pro tennis players who would just have fun on a paddle court. It was the distraction, the way to release pressure, because tennis is such a grind and a different experience. Paddle is the
Yeah.
joyful moment. And as we know, paddle can also be competitive. I mean, and truly a great exercise and
Yeah.
proper, downright competition. But when you transition from tennis to paddle, it often can be complicated. Well, so talk about what it was that allowed you to become good at playing paddle, as opposed to just being a tennis player on a paddle court.
Yeah, that's definitely it's hard to get rid of the bad habits from a tennis player going into a paddle court. And what I mean with that is, letting the ball go behind you, the movement as well. Try to understand that the game is not about winners, if it's more about less errors. So for me, I think it was just spending a lot of time in the court and then playing against people that were better than me that don't come from tennis. So you like they're actually like through grew up playing paddle, so you get to understand better their strategy, the game. That's kind of like what helped me a lot, just playing with people that were better and playing with people that they don't come from tennis. So you can see different type of shots and yeah, just probably spending the 10,000 hours in the court over the last 10 years. That's definitely one big factor.
Well, I have a suspicion you know my cousin Nelly and Nelly
Mm,
Grinda. And
yeah,
Nelly, he always says, really, it's not about making winners, it's about not making losers, not making
correct.
errors on the court, which is, I mean, true about so many sports, especially at a beginner stage. But then at some level, as you get better and better, you do need to make winners. And so that
Yeah.
ability to take those risks that aren't too stupid, it's not the same as in tennis, but you still need to have the ability. And you play on the left. What makes you the left-sided player that you are?
It's fun. It's always a fun discussion with once you get to like a pretty like you competitive level, everybody thinks that the best player should play on the left, and that's not necessarily true, right? It just um but for me, what I like about the left, it's just I tend to be a little more aggressive. Like obviously, like be patient and working on building the points. But whenever the opportunity arises, just step in and try to hit a por tres or por cuatro and hit it outside the court, and just have like a fairly decent overhead, right? That can easily hit it out.
Yeah, but it's so tempting to thwack the ball. I played a
Yeah,
game even this morning in the pro with whom I was playing. Absolutely missed the ball. I mean, whiffed on the ball, and it's rather remarkable. I don't feel like you see that in tennis. Whiffing,
yeah,
abs just completely missing the ball, like Galán,
yeah,
who one of your favorite players. I mean, it happens to him that he can.
yeah.
There's a lob comes up and he just and he misses the ball. Of course, you can always recuperate it off the back wall and so on, but it's amazing. What do you think is it that allows for that sort of a mistake to happen, even at the highest level?
I think just the distance is too short, right, between one player and across the net. So sometimes like you are maybe one a little bit step behind and you're a little bit off, and then you just completely miss it. And obviously, the racket's smaller compared to other racket sports like tennis. But it's good to see that those guys are still human and they make those kind of mistakes that happens to all of us. And I think for me, for example, here in Miami, we're more used to playing outdoors too. And
Uh,
the wind too, like you just a small change in the wind, like you suddenly like you're expecting the ball here and you like completely miss it, right? So it happens a lot too. And I think now also that's why the pros they all prefer to play indoors, right, and outdoors, because those little details, like it's like a small variable in the game, can change a lot of things for them.
so
Um,
true. I mean, also of course the sun, and it reminds me of like the net cord. It's remarkable. Sometimes I'm at the net or coming up, and the ball struck, and it just clips the net cord. The change of the trajectory is minimal, but you entirely miss the ball. I mean,
yeah.
it even might be the same trajectory, but because you see the clip, you then you're trying to anticipate it, and it's amazing how we can still miss the ball. So hashtag
Yeah.
we're all human. What about what's your favorite shot then?
My favorite shots, I mean, it doesn't happen every day, but
Oh,
whenever you go outside the court and somebody hits a portres and then you just
yeah,
like hit
you
it
get it
inside from
back.
the other side, you get it back. That's just a really cool feeling.
That's magical. And what about the
Uh,
obviously you play on the left. Well, what sort of shot are you thinking you still need to work on?
I think I love them, but if I can pick one, I would say the Vibora. It's just it. I feel like it's a great shot that you can mix it up your game. Like whenever you have the opportunity to be a little more aggressive, rather than try to overhit, with an overhead, just have the skills to do like a very deep vibora to set up maybe the next shot that you might hit, a por tres or por cuatro after that one. Because in the warm up they all come like very loose, but once you
Yeah.
start getting the rally, it's a different
And
story. So when you're warming up, right, just keep the viewer like no issues. But in the game, it's so difficult. I feel like you just have to be very well positioned. You have to hit on the right part of the racket. It's a tough shot that I think just requires a lot of practice that I haven't mastered for sure.
And we life is a work in progress.
Correct.
I assume you play with Ricardo. Does Ricardo play on the right when you play
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, he does. I don't know if he likes that too much, but I always think like he just I tend to be more of an aggressive player than him, so
Yeah.
it makes more sense. And yeah, he can be good like doing the point, hitting some like really unique shots that you wouldn't expect.
Yeah, well, Ricardo is a unique player in my book. He has these sort of inventive shots. He's the way he moves around the court. He's sort of like a cat or a puma, where he's
uh,
just figuring it out. And then all of a sudden, the ball keeps coming back, and it's behind in this ups and downs, and it's all over the place. Very
he
magical.
he he abuses that he has really good hands, so sometimes he gets too creative on the court, which sometimes is good, sometimes it's bad, but it's just fun to see some like shots you wouldn't expect.
I would call him as pure joy. That's what I
Yeah.
say when you say the fun. All right, so Diego, you're based in Miami, and you're seeing the massive growth in Miami, amongst other places. But you decided to create this company called Sunrise. So, what is Sunrise Capital, and where how are you organizing? Because it seems like it's a very complete investment tool that you've got. But to give us a little bit of an understanding of what Sunrise Capital is all about.
Yeah, we're a sports focused fund that we specialize in paddle. So we've been pioneering this in the US since several years ago. How we started in the industry, just making some angel investments with our own capital, because we saw the opportunity early on in the US where we wanted to get involved. We like the cash flow aspect of the clubs. It was very interesting. We saw that the sport in a lot of countries grows like very fragmented. And we saw an opportunity in the beginning in the US trying to professionalize as much as possible and bring institutional capital, bring best practices, playbooks, technology, everything into the facilities. So our journey, how we started, we started invested our first phase of Sunrise, what we call like Sunrise Fund One. We invested in 9 padel clubs across the US. So I think until this day, nobody has that many exposures into like paddle clubs in the US in this market. Um, and we're very happy with the facilities, the clubs, the projects, how they've been developed over the last 18 months or so. And that's kind of like was our first phase of the journey. And right now we are working on what we call Sunrise 2, Fund 2, that we are investing across the entire value chain of paddle, of the ecosystem,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And what we mean with this is infrastructure on the club side. We mean technology. Bringing on the technology side, for example, booking systems, CRMs, loyalty platforms, AI-powered cameras and data analysis, those type of things. And then the last piece of the puzzle is the rest of the ecosystem, or what we call like sporting properties. So amateur leagues, professional leagues, media and hospitality, those type of opportunities. Um, yeah, and we just see a big opportunity that now paddles. We do believe it's gonna become a true like asset class over the next 5 to 10 years with everything happening in the industry over the last 5-10 years, especially over the last couple of years.
So I was speaking with another friend who's investing in paddle, and he doesn't like paddle at all. And the idea suddenly was, well, don't invest in your passion.
Correct.
So how do you mix, or at least keep your cold investment mind solid when you have your paddle and your passion for paddle?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we always say that we have to remove the passion out of it, right? As you mentioned, and when somebody wants to introduce us to a potential LP, and it's like, yeah, this guy loves paddle, right? You should talk to him. It's like that's great, but this is not investment based just because you like paddle, right? It's actually an investment because we were looking for this type of returns. So we're always very discipline on our due diligence on like what opportunities fit our criteria for the type of return that we're looking for, right? So the good and bad thing about the passion is like, okay, we understand the business really well because we're very passionate about it. But from the investment side, we just look at the numbers, right? You just come down to the unit economics and the opportunity.
So give me an understanding of how investing in paddle would be different than, let's say, investing in tennis or pickleball, because pickleball is a little bit more likely in terms of its recency. But the economic model of paddle, give us an understanding of how and where it's really juicy to be
Yep.
investing in paddle.
So I'll talk a little more about the infrastructure side. Like that's one of our core deployments into clubs. About 60% of allocation goes into clubs. Um, the thing, and I'm not an expert in pickleball or tennis facilities per se, but like the thing that we look at tier one markets in the US. Right now, on the infrastructure side, we only specialize in the US market because that's where we see the biggest opportunity in the next few years.
And sorry, just to
Um,
understand why tier one.
why tier one
And
cities
I just want
markets?
you made I just because I like the joy of paddle and a little bit of fun
Yeah.
with words. What about Tijuana, tier one? No, just kidding. What is it about tier one that is the appropriate thing? Because it's the richer, the more cosmopolitan. What is it that you're looking for in tier one?
Yeah, we look at large urban centers, very also more international, diverse type of city. And also in those tier one markets, there's already one or two or three or four clubs in town. So we prefer to be the second, third, fourth, fifth, or best facility than being the first one in a new market. Well, that's a little more challenging.
Creating the paddle.
Creating the community. That's a really tough job on that first operator. So and don't get me wrong, we've done investments in tier two cities. It's going great. Like it just ramp ups are taking a little bit longer than tier one markets, which is expected. But we look at some things that we keep in mind is how unique is this site, this location? Are you like in a industrial warehouse area where somebody next to you or down the road can lease another warehouse, and then yeah, you have two clubs cannibalizing each other. So we do a proper study of the area, in like a 3 to 5 mile radius, like how likely somebody else to open, close by. We look at the demographics as well. That's very important. Like what's the average household income, age, in like 5 to 10 miles ratio.
And what
We look
about
at
a Hispanic? How many,
correct.
a
We
Hispanophone?
it's not like a main driver at this point. That it's not for us a requirement that hey, 30% of the population has to be Hispanic. It's not because now we're at a point where maybe you asked me like 3 years ago, I would say like yes, but now we've seen a lot of a lot of Americans as well really loving and adopting the sport very quickly. So now it's not like a really good factor. It's just more overall about disposable income, to be honest, and time and age. That's what we focus on, and then obviously that the site has the right infrastructure, ceiling space, column spacing, ceiling height, column spacing. We do like the clubs that offer, have space for more amenities. So I think that's a big difference in the US compared to the markets. That's the clubs, you're fighting for that third space, right? So you need to provide like a really good reason of why somebody's going to go to your third space versus go to an Equinox or go to a gym or go to like a social club or whatever that might be. So we do like the clubs that offer like a wellness, like cold plunges and sauna, maybe like a flex room to do Pilates or yoga or do some events. And that's sort of the type of facilities that we're looking for, not your pure just, hey, I have 5 courts and a restrooms and that's it, right?
Mm.
Just because we do think that the US market, it's a little bit where the sport is today, it requires a little more sophistication.
So you mentioned demographics. What is your core market in the terms of demographics?
Demographics, we're looking at least, an average income of $100,000 a year. The population between 30s and 50s, that's kind of like the sweet spot that we've seen. Those are kind of like the main demographics. And then also
Well,
we,
and I was just going to
oh,
ask about women,
mhm.
because there's a recent study that showed that only 29% of British players are females, whereas in Portugal and Spain, it's more or less 50-50. In the States, how is it with the female population?
Historically in the past it's been more male dominant. Now it's starting to change. I will say, and we don't have a lot of data on like overall in the US. Like I think it's gonna get closer to 50-50 pretty soon. In Miami, I think it's already 50-50 for what we
Well, a
see.
hat tip to Andy Newgarden, of course, who's
Yeah,
leading the charge for women
correct.
in the States, who's also
Cheers.
been on my pod.
Yes.
And what about internationally? Have you been exploring, other growth markets?
Yeah, to be honest, we're lucky now in a position that we get a lot of people reaching out for different projects all over the world. Obviously, right now there's a big boom in Southeast Asia. There's in Australia, New Zealand. There's a very interesting market right now. India, for example, is starting to take off as well. We just we need to stay focused on the US market because that's what we know at this point, and that's what we've been specializing over the last few years. Eventually, yes, we might in maybe in a following fund might focus on other growing markets outside the US, but for now, we're still gonna deploy in the US for the next few years.
All right, so I have another podcast, and I've run businesses, and so I look at a paddle club as a business, strictly speaking. To what extent is the brand important to you?
At this point, on, people are not going to a club because of the brand yet. Maybe only one has accomplished that, and that's Reserve.
Mm.
I think that's the only one has like they have built more of a lifestyle brand in that sense, where yeah, maybe people are driving there and justifying playing a premium because of the brand. The rest, I mean, it's important. Don't get me wrong, but right now it's not a key factor.
All right, so
Yeah,
you mentioned creating this sort of third space that people want to go to. Where is the profitability going to be? Is it going to be in the annex, the accessories, the drinks at the bar, or is it going to be the lessons with the pro, or is it just going to be flat old court fees?
to be honest, here we try to focus more on a membership model. And I think just because the US consumer is more used to memberships as well. Um, and from
Which is not at all the case in Spain, which
correct,
really is pay to play. You can rock up pretty much anywhere except for the private clubs. But
correct. So on the business side, we love memberships. There's nothing like further of the month and have some recurring revenue, whatever is happening weather-wise, seasonality-wise, it's great for business. Um, and the reason that we like to add different amenities into the club, so you justify the value of why somebody should be paying that membership, right? That's what we see is the biggest one of the biggest upsides, and also just events, doing corporate events at the clubs, and then in order to do that and win a lot of corporate events or bring a lot of corporate events into the club, you need to offer really nice facility, right? That invites people to stay and hang out and consume and do an event and host a party, host their company, or whatever that might be. Um, for example, we have this club in Chicago called Union Paddle, which they have a full bar with liquor license. They have a co-working area. They have a members only space. They just hosted this week the sales kickoff for Wilson's internationally. They all flew to Chicago and they did the kickoff of Wilson at the facility. It's a really nice facility. You can play some paddle, you can drink, you can eat something. So that's why we focus on trying to build like a really nice start space that you can also justify having these really nice events.
so there are two other areas that are of interest as we discuss about the paddle in the United States in particular. One of them is the availability of good coaches.
Mm.
in England, it's very difficult to attract a Spaniard who's used to sun, good fun, good paddle, and coming to a new market where people are just still playing tennis, or they just don't get paddle, and the weather is miserable, and we still don't have enough courts. So it's a problem in Britain. I know that Marcos del Pilar has done a great job in creating an environment where there's a coaching facility, academy, and so on and so forth. How is it for finding coaches, especially when you get into some of those colder climate country
Yeah.
cities like Chicago or Boston?
Yeah, it's tough, to be honest. I think that's gonna be one constraint in the market over the next 5 years. Just trying to find really good coaches. Right now, some of the clubs are already doing converting traditional tennis coaches into paddle, but that obviously takes some time, right? It's great that they know tennis, they know racket sports, but it's not realistic to certify a paddle coach in a weekend, right? It's just not happening. Now we've seen a lot of clubs bringing people from overseas, whether from Argentina or Spain. It gets a little bit tougher in the north with the weather, but clubs that are able to get people from Spain or Argentina without problems. For us, what we like to focus to is we do like to have a mix of bringing a coach from the community, from the racket sport community, because they know, we like, for example, tennis coaches that have been around for 10, 20 years teaching classes in different country clubs, because they understand the local community really well, and they can bring people and introduce people into the sport. So we like to having a mix of those coaches and also like a paddle specific coach career that they've been doing this for 10, 20 years. And then it's a matter of that coach having and this is something that a lot of clubs struggle, just having one way of teaching, right? One school of thought about how you should be teaching, and they all should be teaching the same. Versus you jump, suddenly you have one lesson and one coach tells you one thing, and then the other one tells you a completely different thing, and they just have very different teaching methods, right? So that's something now that we're planning on doing as well, is just bringing these coaches to continue to develop existing coaches that they're just more new to paddle, but they come from tennis or other sports. It's a journey, right? It's just not happening from one day to another, but you got to continue to invest into up leveling the coaches.
The last area I want to talk to you about, Diego, is sort of the competition side. I start with sort of community competition. You got the USPCA, or United States Paddle College
USPA.
Associate.
Oh yeah, the college one. Yeah.
The college, that's kind of cool. Getting invested or linked into the community. And it does seem to me that there's also a vibrant desire for competition. You've got the PPL, the Pro Paddle League, which creates a kind of a unique competition with cities and all that. I don't know to what extent that's going to proceed. I haven't seen anything recently, but how do you feel about the competition and the community integration with clubs, and how's it going in the States?
Yeah, it's starting to become now like a full ecosystem, right? Of clubs, leagues, competition, and just to give you some numbers. Last year there were more than 140 like USPA tournaments like hosted across the country, which is great. I think it was almost like 100% year-over-year increase in the amount of like competition tournaments from the USPA. And now you have different things happening, like you have the college paddle league, which is great. It's a great start of eventually, maybe in a decade, getting paddle into NCAA, or I don't know how long it's gonna take, but we'll see. And then you have we're actually investors of the National Paddle League, which is the largest amateur league in the US. Just to give you some numbers, last year in the fall season, they have 2,000 amateur players playing across the nation. They all play at the city level, then regionals and the nationals. And they drove almost 50% of the memberships that the USPA has. So the USPA has about 4,000 people registered. Almost half of them came from the National Paddle League. So this all the kind of stuff that just really helps grow the ecosystem. You have the National Paddle League, you have the PPL on the professional side. You have, for example, Andy with Club Sports on the women's league side, growing that as well. You have the Miami Paddle League in Miami, like for Division 1, Division 2. So there's a lot of things happening in the industry, which is great, and that's at this point where we think the money is at the material level, right? Like that's where you gotta from investments point, that's where you want to be, and also to grow the sport, that's where you gotta invest, right? Like that's what we need to grow the amateur players for any other business in the ecosystem to really thrive. Where that's professional competitions, clubs, brand rackets, clothing, wherever you need the amateur level to grow to the sport to really thrive.
And then we will maybe get the media side of things to upgrade, because
Correct.
once that happens, we got money, sponsorships, and everything coming in.
Exactly.
That's great to hear that. So there's so much vibrancy going on. It's exciting. Hat tip to Bill Ullman, of course, who's also
Yeah.
been on the show about the USPA. I want to finish on basically one's little zone. You said you love watching Ale Galán and Delphi Brea. You watch the pro. Do you watch the pros a lot?
I try to as much as I can. I think more of them about pairs, like of partners, rather than liking an individual player.
Right. The team. The
So
team.
a team, yeah, correct. So like I think I have more favorite like teams rather than players,
Who are
if
your
that makes
favorite
sense.
teams these days?
Um, Chingotto and Galán, just because I feel like they
Chingalan.
complement Chingalan because they complement each other really well, and they're the underdogs in the sense like going against Tapia and Coelho. Obviously, watching Tapia and Coelho is just like pure magic on the stuff that they do. Um, but yeah, I would say like Chingalan is probably like my this
I
right
mean,
now our favorite.
Chingotto by himself just brings a smile to your face when you
Correct.
watch him. He's just such an ever ready buddy, got such energy, and being so small, really, in the end of the day, you can just feel he's always being targeted. But boy, does he, and Galán, I feel, is doing a stand-up job of constantly supporting him, talking him through, even if he's totally being in the fridge, he
Yeah,
talks through and he keeps there, and you don't see any time he's like, oh God, they're hitting on him again.
correct.
It,
Yeah, and
it's
I
a
think.
remarkable.
And I like the Chingotto's like background and story of how he made it to the pro level. And I think when he was younger, he started playing on the left side and then switched to the right side. Because the left side players are a little like taller and bigger, but he's so quick, and then he can play. Like I think he's just like super talented and he can do anything on the court. He can play inside. He can hit every shot. Like he's just unbelievable to watch for sure.
And just to follow on, I think that it seems like each of the Argentinians has an amazing story background.
Yeah,
Dinen, Tapia as well. And kudos to the Argentinian men for winning the last World Championships. Um,
yeah.
so Diego, last question. Joy of Paddle is about having fun, and I think Paddle does that. Can you give us a story that comes to mind where you had extraordinary fun, or some sort of memory that you can share with us that bring a smile to your lips and to ours?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the first one that comes to mind, and since we discuss this of left versus right side player, and that happens all the time in
Yeah,
everywhere in the world, I had the opportunity last year to play with Bela, which is notorious for always playing on the left side, right?
yeah. Even as an
Uh,
old man,
yeah, oh man, and he's like one of the, obviously one of the greatest of all
a
time,
legend. Yeah.
a legend. And we were playing together, and then I look at him, and I was like, to be honest, if we want to win, I gotta play the left side because that's the one I know, and then you can do anything. So you should play on the right side. And he was just shocked that like I sent him to the right side. And to this day, I think if you ask him, he will remember. Oh yeah, that guy, Diego in Miami. He put me on the right side, and he's been the only one that has like sent me to the right side. So that's kind of funny. I think everybody was watching is like, how does that happen? Why is Bella playing
Uh,
on the right side?
I mean,
Uh,
I can just imagine. I mean, of course, his pride and his characteristic
yeah,
abilities. Anyway, and the funny thing with a lot of pros, of course, they can do anything. They play all sides and know that stuff. But kudos to you, Diego, the only man who played Bella on the right. Anyway, great story. That's lovely. Diego, how can people find out more about Sunrise Capital, Diego Campos? Any ways you'd send people to go visit and check you guys out?
Yeah, I think our website, sunrisepaddlecapital.com, has a lot of information about what we're doing. It has all the portfolio companies, all the things that we've done in the industry. So you can, people can see more about the clubs, the tech investments that we've done, the leagues, and all that. We try to be active on LinkedIn, just trying to post updates on things happening in the portfolio. So I would say follow Sunrise Paddle Capital on LinkedIn, and also, people can find me on LinkedIn as well. I try to be fairly active. On Instagram, we don't post much stuff. We try to, but that's another probably outlet that people can follow us.
And then if you had a magic wand, who would you like to have contact you? Who's listening, who knows somebody who, or in the ecosystem, is there anyone in particular you would like to say, hey, oh, Diego, I need to contact him?
To be honest, like, I take any phone calls and any emails, like always open to chat about paddle. And even though sometimes we talk to a bunch of people and we don't end up investing, we're always happy to help and however we can to just connect them to people in the industry or in central markets. Just anybody that loves the sport and wants to help it grow, we're open doors and always looking to chat and learn more about. There's a lot of really cool people doing really cool things in the space, so always happy to chat.
Fabulous. Well, Diego, muchas gracias. I look forward to meeting in real life with a game and a beer.
Absolutely.
Hanging out with Ricardo, as I love to do over here in London. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Mente. Gracias.